Well, hello from Brighton and Hove Albion Stadium, where Ireland have been beaten 40-0 by New Zealand in their final pool game here. The Black Ferns were just a different class today, and of course with 6 tries in total, and Braxton Sorensen McGee scoring a hat-trick. Anna Caplice and Ruaidhri O'Connor are here with me. Anna, a quick opinion on that?
Oh yeah, 40-0 actually when you hear it back. Do you know what? It actually is reflective of the game, I think. Very disappointingly for Ireland, but also the first thing is the 0.
Yeah.
But the 40 points for New Zealand, how good they were today. They came truly tuned in, no kind of trying anything out or trying to see if this works. They were full in, game mode, as if it was knockout rugby, and it was great to see the best performance of the weekend for sure. Yeah,
definitely. Before we get into it with you, Rory, just the rugby coverage on Indo Sport is brought to you by Energia. Energia sponsors rugby in Ireland at all levels. The Energia Rugby for All initiative supports inclusion and welcomes everyone of all abilities. To learn more about Energia's rugby partnerships and their exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, go to energia.ie/rugby. Rory, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, for me, coming into the World Cup midway through, you guys have been here the whole way, and I'm with Johnny come lately.
We are delighted to have you here.
Cheers. Coming over, we were on the same flight this morning, Anna. The amount of Irish fans who travelled, the occasion that it was, the haka before the game, the way Ireland stood
great,
up to it, it felt like a really big occasion here in Brighton. The stadium was a cool place to come and attend a game. The quality of the rugby was not quite like Ireland didn't deliver on their end in terms of quality maybe, but their commitment was off the charts, and I thought they stood. I think a lesser team would have wilted. 40 sounds bad, but it was 26 with 5-6 minutes to go, and they kind of wilted at the end. I think what Ireland will be really disappointed by is how they didn't adapt to what New Zealand brought. I did think New Zealand treated this as a last 16 game, like the start of the business end of their season, and a couple of their players really delivered. I thought their line speed was outstanding, but Ireland continued to play ball into the teeth of it. I didn't think they adapted. I keep thinking back to that Dan O'Brien chip over the top that almost led to a try. Once in the whole game did they try and turn them. I thought they kept playing open when they were getting swallowed up. I thought it was a little bit naive. But I guess if you're looking for positives, and Scott Bemand certainly was in the post-match, well, what an exercise to go through a week out from a quarter-final, as assuming that, and he's very positive about the injuries, that they haven't lost 3 or 4 players, to have lived in that heat a week before playing against the France team who aren't as good as the Black Ferns. You would hope, if they learn quickly, they will be better prepared for that game. But obviously you could take a glass half empty view and say that could be damaging psychologically, but the level that New Zealand brought was so far above what they've experienced so far in the tournament. It should bring them on if they can just manage the psychological element of losing 40-0.
Yeah, what about the glass half empty first? Tactical naivety?
Yeah, tactical naivety, especially with, we've seen what Dan O'Brien has brought to this team, and she has been a key element to how Ireland have grown over in recent times over the last year and stuff. But when you can't expect that to work, and I really thought that in the opening rounds we weren't seeing all the cards. I thought that there was going to be something else to throw here, because if Black Ferns shut it down, which they did really well today, I thought there was going to be a little bit more, a variety to it, like a little bit more front-up attack to create more of a platform and more time in the ball for Dana.
It wasn't there today.
It was absolutely not there today, and they'll be really frustrated with that. But it is a little bit, I suppose, a cause for concern that maybe actually we saw all the cards already and we don't have other answers.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, it's hard when you don't have your ball carriers, and I think today we saw the limitations of the team when you lose Erin King, Aoife Wafer and Dorothy Wall, and that's up against a really physical, powerful team. And even just watching France down below as they play against South Africa now, they have that power up front. So it's I'm watching Aoife Wafer in that warm-up. I'm not sure you're going to see her next week. That she's not moving freely on that knee. He's obviously brought her for a reason, and she wouldn't be here if they didn't think they could get her on the pitch. But such a massive ask for her next week to come back. But if they did get her out there and she did win those collisions, or even 5-metre scrum early in the game, if you've Aoife Wafer picking off the base, you said it to me during the game, Sinead, that's a different picture for New Zealand. Whereas Brittany Hogan is really good, but she's not quite that as punchy. Their line out at times didn't execute when they had New Zealand where they wanted them for the first 10-15 minutes of the game.
Great start.
And had a chance to get a bit of scoreboard pressure to back up that stance they took at the start of the game. And a lot of what they did early on was really good, but without that punch, with a maul that was able to get some change, but also was leaky enough that New Zealand could get hands through and hold it up like we saw towards the end. They just didn't have the wherewithal to put it all together, and then they never got their dangerous backs on the ball either. Like Amy Lee Costigan didn't really get into the game at all. Baby Parsons was like their most energetic player, but it was mostly in defence. So like it was hard for them to put it all together because I think the level that New Zealand brought to it was so far in advance of what anyone else has brought. But like France are going to be at a level as well next week, and that's where can Ireland bridge that gap without the players that they're missing, which has always been the kind of cloud that's kind of hanging over this team coming into the World Cup.
What do you think, Anna?
Yeah, I think maybe there was an air that, throw everything at today and learn your lessons from it. And then whoever you meet next week isn't going to be as good as that. So, is that... There's different ways you can look at it. This whole rumour of like, were they going to go a bit easy and take the foot off the pedal today, or was it going to put everybody out there who we were kind of expecting to see in almost a full strength team, and that's what he went with. So the lessons have been taken. We won't know if this was the right way to go about things until actually next week or maybe beyond. So. Yeah, just so many moving parts there as well. But actually, in terms of like the set piece, the scrum was really good, and like for Niamh O'Dowd to have not being given the starting place, and then to come in, like we were chatting about it beforehand, and there was a bit like, I don't know about her scrummaging now. Like fair play to her for saying, all right, you didn't think I was good enough to start. Well, I'll show you.
Yeah, she was on it.
Yeah, and her, you know what? She was key to that victory in Vancouver. Actually, her line speed. Really did. The Black Ferns couldn't figure it out that time. They had it kind of figured out today because they used their offload way more, and it punished Ireland. So you have to be able to adapt as well. And if Niamh O'Dowd is going, too quick out the line, are you covering in behind her? Like their offload was so, they used like it at multiple times, and just that kind of allowed the Black Ferns into it like more and more, and gave them more momentum. And Ireland just didn't adapt.
Yeah, let's just a very brief synopsis of the game. So New Zealand obviously had that 19-0 lead at half time. They did the damage down the wing. Stacey Waka, what's the smiling assassin? Is that her?
Assassin.
Yeah, that's her nickname. Yeah. And Braxton Swords and McGee as well. She scored that hat trick, of course. And then losing Stacey Flood to that injury. Indications are from Scott Bemand there that it might be a cut. Is that right?
Yeah, it must be like a serious laceration on the foot, because she, just talking to Fiona Coughlin on the way out, she was saying she could hear screams on the ref mic during comms, and obviously forced her off the game. So like it's not just a nick, like it's obviously something quite serious, and whether they can stitch that up and cover it up and get her right for next week seems like a big ask given what the way we saw her come off the pitch.
She did go back on now, and she was in a boot, and she was in the circle with the rest of them afterwards, and a few of them were kind of giving her hugs and all that. So she looked much better than the way she looked obviously when she goes back, because she will be a huge loss.
Yeah, and everything else was precautionary. He said Elena Perry was withdrawn as a precaution, Adele McMahon he said was a precaution,
Eve McMahon went off as well.
Yes, and then you had Eve Higgins was a HIA, but she passed her HIA, Scott Bemand was saying. So that's all positive as long as there's no subsequent symptoms. So like what looked like a really damaging day potentially sounds pretty good. Obviously we don't know, it'll come up in the next couple of days because they are thin in certain areas. I guess Dan O'Brien went 80 but came through it and will be better for the experience. Like that's obviously the risk factor over the squad altogether. They've only one proper 10, so it's like that's a good thing. I guess that's a positive if it is. I'm used to coaches telling me one thing about injuries and maybe not being how it is by Tuesday or Wednesday, but it could. And like they took some toll in the Black Ferns as well. Like there's they physically they took it out of them, and I think that's something that they can draw some pride for. That New Zealand had to work for it. Like Scott Bemand said that the New Zealand defence coach was talking to him and said that it had been a difficult day for them, and they forced them into errors. I mean, it could have been a bit more ugly had New Zealand held the ball in the 22 a little bit better during the first half, but that was partly down to Ireland's pressure in their defence. They were a bit too open on kick chase, I think, and Dan O'Brien's kicking has obviously been such a strength and keeping the ball long and on, but when you've got those calibre of those players running it back at you, it's a different picture.
Yeah, do you agree with that on Dan O'Brien, that this is going to stand to her? Because obviously as soon as Stacey went off, Stacey was going to be the backup out half, which I don't know why Nicole Fowley obviously wasn't on the bench, because she's the obvious backup out half to Dana. So as soon as Stacey went off, like Dana was going to be playing the full whack, and I'm not sure if that was going to be part of the original plans for her. Obviously the big games against England and stuff, she gets taken off midway through the second half, so she had to stay on for the whole 80 minutes there as well today.
But even if we think back to 2 weeks ago against Japan and how fatigued she was towards the end of the game there, I just get worried that this has been, and next week will be a fourth start in a row with after 3 very full-on games,
which this Irish team hasn't done before. They've never played 4 games back to back. It's been 3.
Exactly. The Six Nations always has that break, so it's almost easier mentally to empty the tank, and like to. You can always say, and she'll say, of course I'm feeling fine, but you have to trick your mind into it to try and get the most out of your body sometimes. But she looked tired at times today, as she did the last 2 weeks. I mean, it's an 80-minute game, and when you rely on her so much for so many different, for so much of your play, it's very fatiguing, and I worry about her level of fatigue coming into a quarterfinal.
Yeah, anyone else out there today, Rory, that kind of stood out for you?
Well, I thought Avian Parsons was excellent. I thought her attitude, even the fact that she snuffed out the one conversion that New Zealand missed, she snuffed it out with her enthusiasm and perceptiveness of seeing that the fullback had made the move. I thought she was excellent. I thought Eve Higgins, playing out of position largely. I know she got a bit roasted for one of the tries, but I thought she did an awful lot right. She got Ireland on the front foot early in that second half. I think where they can get better is just their decision making at 9 and 10. It's not just about Dan O'Brien. I think at 9, I think just spotting that sometimes you can go short side. It doesn't have to go open all the time.
Yeah,
and just
you mentioned that a
picture.
few times to go to the blind side.
Well, you see teams playing it. If you play into the teeth of a rush defence like that all the time, you're going to get swallowed up, and it just changes the picture for New Zealand if you just start going blindside. If you do those little short kicks over the top, and it doesn't always fall on the 10, so that's an element. But I thought the pack, Anna's touched on it. The scrum was very good. The line out was hairy at times, but was largely, fairly solid. And the maul did get over the line. They just need to tighten up and not leave the gaps for the New Zealanders to get through. So, there is stuff that they can build on. And, they did get into the New Zealand 22 and onto their line frequently. So if they're more clinical and a bit more, just make better decisions. And is there another layer? I guess that's the question. You're expecting another layer. It was a bit blunt. It was a bit predictable. And they didn't thrive under the pressure. They seemed to wilt a little bit in the face of that line speed, and that's a worry because France will have watched that and gone, well, we now know how to get at this team.
Yeah, and I on that as well, like the kind of wilting under pressure, there seemed to be moments where some players wanted to go fast but were scared, and then some players wanted to slow it down because they needed to regroup. So the thing about going, if you want to go fast, like Emily Lane came in with real energy, and she kind of wanted to take a couple of quick balls there, and eventually she did, but she doubted herself first. And actually, if she'd gone with it when she initially thought of it, she could have got in herself over the line. And then we ended up coughing it up because we just gave the milliseconds back to them with that doubt. And at 9 as well for Avian, she was lifting the ball a lot. There seemed to be mixed messages coming, or maybe no messages at all. So do you have a plan where you're playing 3-4 phases ahead, but then they're like, this isn't going to work, so I'm just holding on to it, or I'm giving an option that we haven't practiced? They just seem to be.
That's not great to listen to, Anna, you saying that. For this team.
No, it's not. But they haven't really shown that before.
Yeah.
I think they went into their shells. I think they just cracked under the pressure of the occasion, which is a real shame because the stadium was full, so many green jerseys.
So is this expectation, all the rest? We've beaten them the last year. Do you think it kind of got to them?
Maybe. I think there's always that belief that you can, because they've done it before. Mm-hmm. I just think that the Black Ferns were sick of this matchup being so, Ireland is a team you could lose to, and it was 75% win rate for Ireland. Is that right? Are they the right figures? And now it's just they don't have that against other teams. They wanted to put that to bed, especially Ireland absent from the last World Cup. Mm-hmm. They turn up here and they're supposedly the ones that are going to beat the Black Ferns. The Black Ferns were sick of it, and it's credit to that pressure from this Irish team that forced this performance from the Black Ferns today. I think because with your quarterfinal tucked away, it didn't work well for England, and it was okay for Canada, but the Black Ferns got into fifth gear because they wanted to put this debate to bed and send a message, and that's testament to how Ireland have pushed them.
I think it's pressure rather than expectation on the occasion, because I thought they lived up to the occasion at the start of the game. So I think they went into their shells when they were faced with a picture that they hadn't seen since the England game in the Six Nations, where they were just subsumed. And in fairness, they were really good in that game, but when England got on top of them, suddenly you're just making decisions and you've no time. And you've had time against Japan and Spain, and you've been able to enjoy your rugby, but suddenly Dan O'Brien's getting the ball and there's four All Blacks or Black Ferns kind of on top of her right away, and she's making decisions that she wouldn't ordinarily make, and that's in her head then the next time. And also, if you don't get over the line the first time and you don't get over the line the second time when Brittany Hogan knocks on close to the line, then suddenly you're getting desperate and you're chasing it. And that's where you would hope that next week, having had a bit of time to reflect, that you go, well, hang on, we don't have to, even if we don't get over the first and second time, there will be a third time, because there was a third time, and like the luck went against them a little bit as well.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they would have won the game, but like Amy Costigan chasing after that kick,
goodness.
and it rolls out. You're like, that's not going to be our day at all. And there was a few moments like that. I thought a couple of decisions went against them. I thought they could have reviewed the head high shot on Grace Moore just before.
Yeah, what do you make of Holly's performance as ref?
I thought she missed a couple of things. Like, I thought she let the game flow. It was a great game to watch, and that in terms of the way both teams were allowed to play. But I just thought there was a few bits. I thought there was a deliberate knock on close to the line when Ireland were on top by Georgia Miller that she got away with. It was given as a knock on, and then Ireland lost the advantage. So few bits, like, and that's just little things that go against them. I'm not saying by any means that they win the game with those decisions, but it might have cut them on the score sheet if they were playing against 14 for 10 minutes. And again, next week that they might get those decisions, and that's something that happens to you. So, but yeah, the one that rolled out, I just thought summed up the day. Or even when they, Miller makes a turnover, and then suddenly at the other end, she's, they didn't get to try it, but like, she's laying on a try for one of her teammates, and look, like New Zealand were able to turn defensive into attacks. It was so much easier for them to do it. Yeah. They had such good players and such threats in so many departments. They were very impressive to watch today.
Usually we can't really forget New Zealand wins or losses that easily. How are they going to just forget about this one now, bin this, because they've got the game of their lives coming up this weekend against what we're assuming will be France. That game is still ongoing.
But I think it's that reality of look, this would have been lovely, but actually, in the grand scheme of things, it ain't over till it's over. So what do we do? Do we kind of, lick our wounds all week and dwell on those things? Or do we actually find the solution and ask really hard questions while we're really trying to recover? It's such a huge element of it. So recovering your body, knowing that there's another, after a game like that, another massive game. And actually, to go back to the point we were talking about earlier, about the how hard New Zealand had to work for it, coming around at the end, some of the players stopped to say hello. They were their hearts were still pounding, their legs were still burning. Ireland did push them as well. When you said that actually in the opening, that there was real fight in them, and they didn't give up. They just couldn't convert it. That is what they'll hold on to, and that's the reality. That if you come with that and then you convert, and then a few things go your way, they'll look at those tiny margins in the game, which can make things flow differently. And against a team like France, who haven't been wonderful so far, and we still have to watch the game that's going on now, but how will that change the reality? The reality is that there's a quarterfinal to win next week.
Yeah, I remember actually Brittany Hogan said it this week that at the game against the Black Ferns last September was the toughest game she's ever played. I remember talking to one of the Spanish players after they played the Black Ferns in their opening pool game. She said the next day she couldn't feel her body. It just took her a few days to recover from that. So this is going to be a hard one to. I'm sure they've already begun the recovery process now, because they will need to be able to get on the pitch for whatever day, Wednesday, for this game this weekend.
Yeah, but actually the interesting thing about Spain is that after that Black Ferns game, then the stats were massive. They made
the most tackles in that opening weekend.
I read a varied number of these tackles, because there's obviously so many to count. I don't know who exactly got the stats right, but it was a massive number of tackles for Spain. Yeah. Now the interesting thing about that is they had to make a lot of changes, and then they came out against Ireland and then performed really, really well.
Yeah, they did.
So that is that's possible as well. It doesn't mean that because you're wrecked after 1 week, it's going to affect it. It's about how you manage it.
Yeah, so would you see any other changes? Obviously, El Perry was ruled out today with an injury that she picked up maybe a day or two ago. Would you make any other changes? Or how would you look at that team makeup going into the quarterfinal?
I mean, if Fiona Chute is available,
she should be available. Scott Bemand said that on Friday, that she should be available. She picked up a bit of a knock, I think, during last week.
Yeah, maybe she's that ball carrier as well that we were kind of missing today. And even though I found last week against Spain, that when she went back into the second row, she kind of got lost a little bit as well. So it's about how he manages that, and do you keep Grace Moore, who is also one of the other big ball carriers? Yeah. And so there's a little bit of thinking and maybe chess pieces to play around with there. We don't know.
Well, obviously, we were watching Aoife Wafer during the warm up. I mean, that's a big one. If she does kind of come back in,
I don't think we have the information to really know. Even if does Stacey Flood make it? How bad is that? Exactly. Is that cut? And Aoife Wafer is the big one. And what do you do with her? Do you put her on the bench and hope she gets 20 minutes out of her, or do you start her because you know that you might not get what you want, but leave her on for as long as you can, like the way Joe Schmidt did with Will Skelton and Ballatini in the second test of the Lions. Watching her play or doing the warm up today, it looks like she's not right.
And she was wearing
I'm no
strapping on
doctor,
her
but
knee
she
for
was
the
wearing
first time,
she was wearing strapping. She wasn't moving great running. She wasn't moving great walking. It's a huge ask for someone to come in to a World Cup quarter-final having not played for so long, but she's an exceptional player.
If she is fit, and if it is the Aoife wafer that we want to see, and there's this worry of, would you put her straight into start? The Pesi Palu situation from Australia the other night, where she's come back from injury, and she's the Aussie captain, and there was a bit of they put Emily Chancellor back on the bench, and they started, someone who's coming back from injury, might be undercooked, and she played so well. So it's really easy to kind of speculate around these things, but at the end of the day, it's down to the player, how they choose to, and it's not always a choice either, but how they manage to turn up on the day. And I'd almost back Aoife Wafer to just kind of give a spark if she's fit.
Yeah.
If she's fit, like, it has to be 100% or nothing.
Yeah, it has to be a big game on the line. And France, just a quick word on them. Ireland haven't beaten them since 2017, if it is likely to be them. But they're so familiar and so goddamn unpredictable. You just don't know.
The one thing I say about the French is that you just can't take away the fact that they're French. They just can come up with anything, and they could go into their shells and they could throw their hands in the air. They're so likely to kind of go any way throughout a match. Like, if it's going to be Ireland that are going to beat, for the first time, first of all, it's a good time to do it. Okay, it has to happen at some stage, and maybe now, they're not so connected with their, across the squad, it seems, but that's just such a French thing for them to show that image, and then bang, they feel it, and they've done that in the Six Nations. They'd struggle against Italy, and then they'd nearly beat England. Realistically, that's what they're capable of. So what you're hoping for is an off day for France.
But it's a lovely place to be, isn't it? You've
It
gone
is a
from
great
not
place to be,
qualifying to
yeah.
get into a quarter-final, so you're
100%.
already ahead. You've played well at times. You've just gone toe-to-toe with a brilliant Black Ferns team who could win this. They're the champions, and I think there's obviously England are the favourites, but they're in the mix if they play like they did today. And you've got a team that a team that are expected to beat you. All the pressure's on France. It's not going to be as big as this. It's back to a smaller stadium, albeit Sandy Park's it's a lovely ground, a bit like Northampton. You'll have a lot of big Irish backing. It's a free hit in some ways. They're coming here to win the World Cup, but really they're coming. This game is about outperforming their own expectations.
Yeah.
It's about performing. I think it's about taking France to the wire and making France doubt themselves. And we saw in the Six Nations that Ireland underperformed that day. I think if they performed better that day, they could have beaten France. So you're looking at a team that's not unbeatable. Whereas I thought there was a massive gulf between the two teams today in terms of, with New Zealand, with everyone on the field, different to a WXV game. So, there's slightly in bonus territory. They won't see it that way, but they have achieved a lot already, and they should come in just looking to perform. Whereas France will come in wanting a semi-final, or they'll all want the semi-final, but the pressure is on France to get to the semi-final. That's where the expectation lies. I think it's a different challenge to today, and hopefully they thrive with that.
I like this ending on a positivity.
Yeah. Oh, we have to, because I still feel I'm still very close to a lot of the players here, and as a player, you're going away with the positivity, you are. That's what you have to do. That's how I feel now. I'm like, okay, bring it on, because that's, we didn't come just to kind of stumble at a hurdle and let that define us. It ended there in Brighton actually because it just took so much out of them. This is what a World Cup is for, and that's what the pool stages are for, and that's what when I think of the men's World Cup, which was so encapsulating for the Irish public and everything, and that massive win against South Africa in the pool stages. And then we couldn't manage anything, big after that. So that just tells a story of a World Cup. At a World Cup, the pool stages exist only for these kind of roller coasters,
sure.
And nothing actually matters until you make it to a quarterfinal, and then you produce something there.
Yeah.
And you're possibly the biggest Irish crowd at a women's rugby game today.
Yes.
It didn't happen in Ireland, and so it won't count as an attendance record. But that's a
God,
lot bigger crowd than you
yeah.
get at a game in Musgrave Park. So the team has brought a lot of people with them, and they bought into it. And even they were singing "Zombie" at 34-0 down or whatever, or 33-0 down, and the crowd stayed with them.
They
so
did, yeah.
you're searching for positives after a 40-0 defeat, but you have just come up against the world champions who performed unbelievably well. So yes, they weren't anywhere near where they wanted to be, and they didn't. They'll be disappointed with the performance, but there are things that they will be able to cling to, I think, this week as they go towards that game in Exeter, which is a once-off. It's a quarter-final. Like, Ireland are good at quarter-finals, aren't they?
Oh, God. The one thing to add to that is, like, the camera zoomed in on Tricky, on Adele McMahon there at the end. And, the message that she's giving, like, for sure, she is giving the right messages there. Yeah. Along with Sam Monaghan, they're two exceptional leaders, and they'll be raging that they just didn't perform today.
I saw that. After all the disappointment, and still Adele, they were just, I could see the team talk that they were giving, and because I was even impressed with talking with Sam Monaghan. She was so positive, straight away, straight into it. This wasn't going to be dragging them down, was the sense that I was going. They were going to analyse and all the rest, but they were ready to move on, which is a good place to be.
It would be a shame for this game to drag down what, we can, understanding the whole context is like, look, this is a really good place for Irish rugby after everything that, they've been through and we've been through and everything. But actually, they do want more from this.
Yeah, okay. Is that it? On to
just don't go lose 40-0 again next week. Like, that's when it matters. So, a performance next week, sign off on a lot of progress, but like potentially a performance gets you what you want into a semi-final, and that'd be an amazing achievement. So
they will be
it's an unusual day today, isn't it? Because the stakes were. There was a massive event and the stakes were quite low, so it's hard to analyse in some ways, but there's stuff they'll take from it. Yeah, no, they sure will, and they will go on to Exeter tomorrow for that World Cup quarter-final. We'll be back with a podcast after the game in Sandy Park at Exeter next Sunday, I believe it will be. But for now, Rory and Anna, thank you very much for joining me, and thank you for listening.